It's that time of the week. It's that time of the week when we go over to the left coast of the United States to check in with Michael Snyder to see what's happening in movies. He goes to them, so you don't have to. Anyway, Michael, what's up?
Hey, you're going to want to go to some of this stuff. Well, at least this opening film, if it's your cup of tea. And I do say cup of tea because there's a lot of British information, British characters and what have you here. This is Dunkirk, and it's the work of Christopher Nolan, the writer-director behind the Dark Knight trilogy of Batman movies, Inception, and other recent films of respected vintage. And this one is a World War II movie, which is all about the evacuation of Allied troops from the French city of Dunkirk, right up near Belgium, before they could be overrun by the Nazis in, I guess, 1940, early in World War II. And there's artistry and technical aplomb and an ensemble cast that's more than up to the challenge of this. And Nolan has made a magnificent and challenging movie about the price of war and the nature of courage, and he's brought it to the IMAX screen. It's one of the most remarkable retreats in history. I mean, I know that sounds absurd, a great war movie about a retreat, but it's fantastic. And it doesn't worry about linear storytelling, and instead gives bits and pieces of this ensemble's worth of tales that mostly come together and offer resolution at the end of, I guess, 107, 110 minutes. Those who complain about what can seem like a cut-and-paste structure and can't or don't want to follow the time shifts and callbacks that Nolan presents, I mean, this is the guy who made Following and Memento, so, story structure is something he'll toy with. These people are the kind of people that complain that Game of Thrones is too complex to follow all the plot lines. My advice, as far as Dunkirk, is to pay attention and you'll be rewarded. It's incredibly well crafted, grippingly immersive, and among the finest war movies I've seen. And it's one where the blood and guts are not splattering the screen, but it's a movie that lingers far beyond the viewing and might even be greater with successive viewings. Because of the increases in technological aplomb, speaking of aplomb, the effects, the sense of being in a cockpit and flying high above, the English Channel and such, and in a boat that's sinking because it was just hit by a torpedo, they're beyond belief now. You really feel that that's what's being shot live on the screen. That stuff is amazing, and maybe has elevated this to a greater height than it might have been if they tried to make it 10, 15 years ago. But there's intimacy, there's an epic sweep, there's tragedy, and there's triumph of a sort. I mean, even if this monumental retreat counts as the result of a lost campaign, it was again in 1940 and set the stage for the rest of World War II, and those of us with a little bit of education know how that turned out. The cast includes Fionn Whitehead, who is a fledgling, a new face on the screen, and he plays Tommy, who's sort of the first soldier you meet, but it also has fine performances by more familiar actors like James D'Arcy. Cillian Murphy is fantastic, Mark Rylance, and Tom Hardy. And Tom Hardy will really surprise you in this film, and I won't tell you why. Anyway, high marks to Dunkirk. I was left virtually speechless at the end of the film, and only now have I begun to absorb some of what I saw. I guess you'd call this one a recommendation. I wish I could be this positive about Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. I mean, speaking of the wonders of the cinema, I will say that Valerian is stunning to watch and worth enduring the rather cardboard performances of its nominal leading man and leading lady, if only to marvel at the beauty and the dazzling creativity of its first half hour or so. I hear that writer, director, producer Luc Besson, that's the guy who made Femme Nikita, Fifth Element, the Transporter series as a producer, and most recently wrote and directed a film I think is a better one than this one, Lucy. I hear that he bet the chateau on this. I mean, he's hoping that it's going to explode internationally and he's going to have a big old franchise on his hands. There's a lot of sniping and poorly written banter. and virtually no chemistry between callow smirk machine Dane DeHaan as Valerian and vapid mannequin Cara Delevingne as Laureline, the characters that are the hero and heroine of a spectacular series of French graphic novels that were created by writer Pierre Christin and artist Jean-Claude Mézières. They were first published like in '67, and the final installment was published in 2010, and Besson has apparently decided to bring this property to the screen starting here. And so we meet Valerian and Laureline in an opening sequence on an idyllic planet of peace and harmony that sets the stage, and they don't actually show up for a little while, and we see instead this glorious alien, dreamlike, wonderful existence like nothing I've ever seen on the screen. But then we have our two heroes who are, I guess, agents. These are agents, undercover assignment agents, and they're in a multi-dimensional planetary shopping mall, and this sequence is just fantastic. I mean, it's mind-blowingly clever and well executed, and then the bogging down sets in. I do wish this was better in that regard, but the experience of it was pretty wonderful. It's longer than Dunkirk, and I think that's telling on some level. Supporting players include Clive Owen, Rihanna, and Ethan Hawke have a great set of sequences in this, and in typical fashion, Besson has hired and cast someone unexpected. Herbie Hancock, the jazz great, plays some sort of defense minister on an intergalactic level. Rutger Hauer, you have John Goodman offering a voice. It doesn't add up to something more than the sum of its parts. Instead, again, you either like this kind of science fiction stuff on the big screen, or you shrug at its sort of silliness and, again, a kind of cardboard nature. I mean, if you're going to see it in 3D on the big screen, and it's your kind of thing, go ahead. But I just was disappointed in Valerian. Landline is a much smaller film. I mean, Landline is kind of your basic, streaming movie on some level, but it's actually really pretty good. It meanders a little bit, but it's a pretty enjoyable period character study set in those far distant 1990s. I mean, almost, but not quite in the digital age. No cell phones, clunky old desktop computers, and Manhattan rentals that a middle-class family can afford. It's clearly the past. Anyway, that family is the heart of the story of Landline, and it's a very well-played story. A couple of sisters who are played and well-played, if I may say so, by Jenny Slate, ex-SNL supporting player, and a new find named Abby Quinn as her teenage sister. They realize their dad, played by John Turturro, could be in the middle of an affair, and they don't know how to tell their mom, who is played, and again, well played, by Edie Falco. So, boy, the cast is just right there. And they have to deal with the interpersonal problems and their own difficulties, such as Jenny Slate's character, who's engaged and maybe questioning it, to Jay Duplass's character, Ben. And she's considering maybe an affair. So this is kind of a little on the soapy side, but it's funny, and it's got a lot of charm to it. Gillian Robespierre is the writer-director. She did Obvious Child before this with Jenny Slate. So they like working together, and I think the earlier film's probably a little better, but I enjoyed Landline, and it's a nice change of pace from, war movies and science fiction films. And if you need that, this could probably do the trick. The Midwife teams two of France's favorite acting Catherines, or Catherines if you prefer, Catherine Deneuve and Catherine Frot. And the former, of course, is a French national treasure, and the latter was the star of Marguerite, which was the French fictionalized version of the Florence Foster Jenkins story that starred Meryl Streep. Anyway, The Midwife is an angst fest about an uptight midwife named Claire, played by Brot, who is contacted by her late father's mistress, Beatrice, a hedonist who's finally reaping the consequences of her party-first lifestyle. And Beatrice is played to what they used to call a fare-thee-well by Deneuve. The movie is largely devoted to the interactions between the two women. When facing a crisis, Beatrice reaches out to to Claire, after not seeing her since she was an adolescent. and dumped Dad. Anyway, not so much happens, but it's interesting to see if Beatrice's love of life can eventually get Claire to loosen up a little after a career devoted to helping her patients experience the joy of childbirth. You know, I would give this like a B minus, not high marks, but seriously, the actresses are so wonderful. You know, it's like you say, oh, you know, I would watch John Hurt read the telephone book. Well, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. Anyway, let's wrap up with Il Boom, or Le Boom, or The Boom, which is a 1963 comedy from Italian director Vittorio De Sica that's been restored and is showing up in art houses starting this weekend. De Sica made his reputation as a leading light of the neo-realist movement that started at the end of the 40s and moved into the 50s. He's the guy that did Bicycle Thieves, Umberto D. But I mean, he could do comedy with a message too. And Il Boom is sort of De Sica's flip side to Fellini's La Dolce Vita. Apparently, a lot of people in the early 60s aspired to the high life but couldn't finance it. Giovanni is one of these guys, played by Alberto Sordi, middle-class guy during that post-war boom, and he's just making ends meet, but putting on a show of comfort and luxury and going nuts, trying to cater to his hot wife's material needs. And it gets to the point where he's kissing up to those who are better off, and he wants to finance this lifestyle, and things don't go well. I think Il Boom is probably going to be available soon via the Criterion Collection, and I think it's great. It's a great film. Sometimes you want to go back to the past and see some of these classics. This would be one of them. Anyway, what do you got in film or TV, buddy?
Nothing, but I never heard of a film called Bicycle Thieves.
Well, it's the Bicycle Thief or Bicycle Thieves.
There we go. It's the Bicycle Thief, not Bicycle Thieves.
Hey, well, you know, maybe there's a question about the actual title. I don't know. I'm not going to go there, but you can pick all the nits you want.
All I know is
the Seagull was great.
I've never seen it or watched it as anything else but The Bicycle Thief. So.
Well, there you go. You've seen it. You've watched it. De Sica, he's a man. Or was.
Yeah. No, I have nothing. Absolutely zilch. Zero.
Did you jump into the new Game of Thrones season?
Yes.
It's a setup. The first episode was a setup. I'm excited to see where it goes.
It was fine. You know, it's more Game of Thrones. You know.
Well, it's a game I like to play. What have you?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll be back next week with more new stuff. And in the meantime, you can check me out on Twitter at Culture Blaster and on Facebook at Michael Snyder's Culture Blast page.
Yeah.
Over to you, buddy.
Well, we have tickets to go see Dunkirk on Sunday, so I'll let you know next week how I feel about it. But I hear wonderful things about it, so that's the film we're choosing to see this week. Anyway, thank you so much, Michael, and Michael will be back again next week. In the meantime, there's more GABNet coming right up.